A couple of years ago, I made a list of what I believe to be some of the best telescope choices for hobby astronomers. Since then, I had a chance to test quite a few more telescopes, and in today's video, I want to refine that original list. Hi, I'm Bogdan Damian, and welcome to Video Observatory. I have tried to keep the following list as clean and simple as possible by splitting it into three budget categories: below 500, 1000 and 2000 bucks, and sorting it by telescope type. So in every price category, we are going to look at a refractor, a Newtonian reflector, and a catadioptric telescope. I'll then proceed to pick what, in my opinion, is the overall best choice out of these three telescope types and tell you why I believe that this is the case. I'll also include some alternatives where I feel that it's a particularly close call. Also, since I'm more of a visual observations type of guy, I put the following list with primarily this type of application in mind. But this doesn't have to mean that some of the telescopes I'm going to mention won't be at all suitable for astrophotography. Without wanting to spoil too much, there are some options down the list that are great for this type of application as well, and I'll make sure to mention it as I'll go over them. Also, please keep in mind that with the exception of the Dobsonian telescopes, all other entries in this list will be OTAs only. So you will need to factor in a mount separately for most of the following options. Alright, let's kick off with the sub $500 price category and look at refractors first. Here I would like to go with the SV543 102 ED from Sfiboni as my favorite refractor option in this price category. I've been using this telescope for the past year, and the combination of good optics and great build quality makes this a very hard to beat telescope. The SFPL51 ED glass element as part of the objective is capable of reducing chromatic aberrations considerably when compared to normal achromatic designs, while delivering bright and very sharp views across the entire field of view. This also makes the SV543 a decent choice when looking for an entry-level telescope for astrophotography. The 4-inch of aperture combined with an f7 focal ratio make this telescope not only great for planetary observations, but for viewing some of the brighter DSOs as well. It's also worth mentioning that this optical design isn't specific only to Sfiboni. The same 4-inch ED doublet with a focal length of 714 mm can be purchased from other brands as well, such as TS Optics or Explore Scientific. But as far as I can tell, only this one from Sfiboni has a price below 500 bucks. Moving on to the Newtonian reflector category. Here I recommend looking at an 8-inch Dob like the 200mm Skyliner Classic Dob from Skywatcher. These one's optics are produced by Sinta and are of decent quality. The mirrors are made out of quality BK7 optical glass and nicely polished, while having a highly reflective coating layer applied to them. Alternatively, you could go for an 8-inch Dob from GSO should the Skywatcher not be available in your region. At 8 inches of aperture, these Dobs, while big, are still very manageable. The large aperture also allows for some great bright views of the night sky, especially DSOs will look great thanks to the good light gathering capacity. Also, with a focal ratio of f6, these are slow enough so that the optics aren't too demanding on the eyepieces, meaning that compatibility issues with eyepieces are basically very rare. The last category is for catadioptric telescopes, such as Schmidt and Maksutov Cassegrain telescopes. In this category, I would like to pick the 5-inch SkyMax Mac from Skywatcher. Its decent aperture size combined with a relatively small obstruction caused by the secondary reflective surface and the slow focal ratio of 11.8 make this telescope an excellent choice for planetary observations. And if you pair it with a decent EQ mount with go-to capabilities, you got yourself a very good astrophotography instrument as well for capturing planets. The main reason for this is the well-corrected meniscus lens at the front, which not only corrects for the curvature of the primary mirror, eliminating coma, but also reduces spherical aberrations almost completely. Only 3.2 kilograms heavy and 330 millimeters long, the OTA is very portable. This means that the SkyMax is the ideal candidate for a grab-and-go setup. Alright, so which one of these three telescopes I personally consider to be the best overall choice? Well, having used all the three options extensively over the years, I'll have to give the edge to the SV543 102 ED simply because at this price point you would be hard pressed to find a better option that is this good at everything, while still being light and compact enough to be taken outside without a problem. While the 8-inch dub would gather significantly more light than the refractor, no question, and therefore offer brighter views, it's also much heavier and bulkier even if you factor in a solid EQ mount for the refractor. While the image quality of the dub is definitely good, it's still not on par with that of the refractor, partially because of the coma resulting from the curvature of the primary mirror, and also because of the diffraction effect that results from the light bending around the obstruction caused by the secondary mirror. The latter effect is also something a Mac would be susceptible to because of its central obstruction. Of course, the SV543 is not perfect. While it does feature an ED glass element, it still isn't able to fully eliminate chromatic aberrations in high contrast situations. And this is something the other two telescope types simply doesn't suffer from. But other than this, there aren't really any major downsides to its design. Alright, let's move on to the next price category and look at some telescopes below $1,000. As refractors go, I believe one of the best options in this price segment is the more or less generic f11 4-inch ED refractor, like this one from TS Optics. It's similar to the SV543 we looked at before, with this one only featuring an optical tube extension and a reconfigured objective lens, which elevates the focal length from 714 to 1122 millimeters. And this alone improves the color correction capabilities considerably compared to the shorter version. This combined with the already very sharp and contrasty lenses makes this telescope an excellent choice for visual observations. Especially planets will look excellent through this telescope. Alternatively, you could go big, I mean really big, and get an f8 150mm Evo Star from Skywatcher. It's a really nice and big achromatic reflector capable of some nice and bright views of the night sky. The relatively slow focal length will help reduce chromatic aberrations even if the objective doesn't feature a low dispersion glass element, and the wide aperture will gather so much more light when compared to a 4-inch objective that even dimmer DSOs will become visible. Some chromatic aberrations will still be visible though, especially at high magnifications above 200x or so, but this is nothing dramatic. The image is still sharp and with good contrast. The downside of all this aperture is of course size and weight. At 7.7 kilograms and over 1 meter long, the OTA is quite big. Here we aren't talking about a grab-and-go telescope anymore. If you can stretch the budget another $200 or so, you could get the very well-regarded Evo Star 100 ED from Skywatcher, featuring a better quality SFPL 53 ED glass element. The optical quality should be similar to the aforementioned f11 ED refractor, only that this one is a bit shorter and also comes with a decent 28mm eyepiece, a 2-inch mirror diagonal, and a much better dual-speed focuser. Alright, moving over to the Newtonian reflector category. I would like to point you towards the 10-inch flex tube Dob from Skywatcher. Its good optics combined with the large aperture and collapsible tube design make this one of the best Dobs on the market today, at least in my opinion. Its great light gathering capabilities allows for some really nice views even of fainter DSOs, while the fast focal ratio of f4.7 allows for a very wide field of view. But why go with a Dob that has a collapsible tube and not pick a closed tube premium version like the 10-inch Pro Dob from Omegon or its equivalent from GSO or Apertura? While a closed tube will better shield from stray light sources like street lamps and arguably also hold collimation better, they are bulkier and have a fixed length for the optical tube. Okay, so why is this aspect relevant, you might ask? Well, there is a somewhat special use case where this plays a very important role. I'm referring to the situation where you might want to use a prismatic binoviewer for observations with both eyes. In my opinion, this is a game-changing experience definitely worth pursuing. The fixed length of the optical tube will make using a bino challenging because you need to work with bellows or glass path correctors to try and compensate for the added path length the light has to travel when using a bino. And as I found out myself, success is not guaranteed. A variable height construction that allows you to vary the length of the optical tube will also enable you to compensate for the extra light path length by simply not fully extending the optical tube of the telescope. If you are interested, I made a whole video on this topic. I'll leave a link down below. So while this type of construction certainly reduces the bulk of the telescope when stored, it unfortunately doesn't save up any weight. We are still talking about an over 30 kilograms heavy instrument here, which can be a challenge to move around. You also don't get a dual speed focuser or any quality eyepieces compared to a more premium Dob like the one from Apertura or Omegon. So take this into consideration as well when you're shopping for one. My choice for the catadioptric telescope category is the 6-inch SkyMax Maxutov Cassegrain from Skywatcher. I like this one because it's a very capable optical instrument, which thanks to the long focal length is excellent when it comes to observing and photographing planets. On the flip side, the almost 2 meters of focal length is also responsible for a narrow field of view, making it less ideal for observing large deep sky objects. If this isn't a deal breaker for you, then you can expect very sharp and contrast-rich images thanks to the quality shot optical glass used for the meniscus lens. Another aspect worth mentioning here is that this telescope features a 2-inch opening at the back, to which a 2-inch mirror diagonal is connected out of the box. This allows you to use extra wide field eyepieces such as the Ethos series from Teleview or the 100 degrees line from Explore Scientific. Alright, out of these 3 picks for the below $1,000 category, I would have to give the edge to the 10-inch flex tube from Skywatcher. It's an excellent all-rounder telescope, good at planetary and DSO observations, that can even be used in combination with a prismatic binoviewer without the need of any correcting lens elements for maximum immersion and comfort when observing the night sky. The missing accessories premium Dobs usually come with, such as a dual speed focuser or a quality eyepiece, are in my opinion a price worth paying for this added flexibility and size savings. Alright, now let's move on to the last price category, telescopes below $2,000. If you are willing to spend up to $2,000 on a refractor telescope, then you are in for a treat, because the market for quality 5-inch apochromatic triplets currently offers some amazing options, out of which I would like to mention 2, because I simply can't decide which one is the better choice. These are the SV550 122mm f7 triplet apochromat from Svibony on one hand, and on the other one the 120 Apo f7 triplet from Askar. While Askar doesn't disclose what type of glass they are using for the ED element, at this price point it's safe to assume that it's an SFPL51, which is exactly what Svibony is using as well. So optically these two should provide very similar views. I tested the SV550 a while back and it blew my mind with very sharp images that were bright and had great contrast. Furthermore, the color accuracy is very good, to a point that I was having a hard time noticing any color fringing even at high magnifications past 200x. The only aspect where the Askar might have an edge over the SV550 is the focuser. Here the 3.3-inch rack and pinion focuser looks and feels more premium than the one used by Svibony on the SV550. But then again, the SV550 is a couple of $100 cheaper than the Askar Apo. It's also worth mentioning that both these telescopes are, because of the very well corrected lenses, especially well suited for astrophotography applications. Paired with a solid EQ mount with tracking capabilities, both can offer some spectacular images of the night sky. Looking at reflectors, there are a couple of interesting alternatives for this price range. The first would be the 12-inch version of the Flex Tube from Skywatcher. Same flexibility, but with a significant boost in terms of light gathering capabilities when compared to the 10-inch one. If you're looking for something with go-to capabilities instead, then it might be worth checking out a 10-inch Flex Tube with alt-azimuth tracking. It's basically the normal 10-inch, but with an updated base that features gearing, 2 electric motors, and a smart hand controller for added go-to functionality. If you want something that is as light as possible but doesn't sacrifice on light gathering capabilities, then the 12-inch ultra light Gen 2 Dub from Explore Scientific might be something worth checking out. It features an open truss design that can be collapsed into a small box that has a minimal footprint and also weighs significantly less than other Dobsonian models. The downside for all this portability is of course the open design that without a light shield won't be able to protect the mirrors from stray light sources like street lamps, thus potentially reducing contrast levels. The open truss design also means that the telescope might not hold collimation as well as a solid tube counterpart, so keep this in mind as well. Alright, now let's look at catadioptric telescopes. Here I would like to mention the C9¼ SET from Celestron. At over 9 inches of aperture and over 2.3 meters of focal length, this telescope is an excellent choice for planetary and DSO observations. Although because of the very long focal length, larger DSOs might not fully fit inside the narrow field of view and you will need to pan around to get the full picture. A minor inconvenience in an otherwise very capable instrument. The views through this SET are thanks to the excellent coatings, bright and full of contrast. The images are very sharp as well, and thanks to the corrector lens, also without spherical aberrations. Pairing this telescope with a decent EQ mount and a good astro camera, you are getting yourself an impressive rig for capturing planets and DSOs. Albeit, as mentioned earlier, the long focal length makes capturing larger DSOs somewhat of a challenge. The very compact optical design makes the SET and SETs in general easy to move around, even at larger aperture sizes like this one. And this aspect should not be underestimated. The easier it is to use a telescope, the more likely it is that you are going to actually use it. Alright, if I had to pick one of the telescopes mentioned in this price category, then I would have to go with the 120 Apo from Askar. Even though it's a couple of $100 more expensive than the similar SV550 from Sibony, I believe that the higher quality focuser assembly with its inherent flexibility thanks to the modular design is worth the extra cost. This added flexibility also allows you to reduce the total length of the optical tube, which in turn makes it possible to achieve focus while using a binocular for visual observations. Alright, this was my 2024 update of my original telescope guide, and now I'm very curious to find out which telescopes you have on your favorite lists and which one you plan on buying next. Let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, that's been it for now. Thanks for watching and catch you guys in the next one.